New Balance Hoops is changing the game with a roster built for the future. Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, and Zach LaVine push the pace, while Cooper Flagg is set to be the next #1 pick. Cam Brink is raising the bar for women's basketball, proving that impact goes beyond the court. Whether it's the Hezzy Low V2s for quick cuts, the two-way V5 for all-round play, or the Kawhi 4 for those who never stop climbing, New Balance Hoops makes shoes built for every player. Visit newbalance.com/basketball to explore more.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer brother low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this wonderful game that we all know and love, we have to talk about what has been so right with the SEC thus far this season, what he's been seeing out of the conference in general, what to make out of the final few games that we're going to be getting from them in 2024, as well as we do have Tennessee in action on Monday, so we're going to be taking a look at that and so much more in the final segment. Well, we've only got 7 games on the board, but we do have 7 games on the board. I'll give you guys picks and analysis on all of those as we hit some bank shots. Now, do note that we do have ourselves a little bit of TBD situation with regards to Diamond Egg Classic going into this, so I did break down a few scenarios on that front, so have no fear there. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @Juden_E1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Your top against the spread team in all of college basketball gets the job done once again. Oregon State now 10-0 against the spread. They do get the win. This by a count of 74-65 against Charleston. Charleston has been really lighting it up from 3-point range as far this season, but you did see Oregon State go out there, put the clamps down on them. As for Oregon State, main man that was able to get it done for them, Michael Dotage, as he was able to throw in their 16 points, 12 boards for Oregon State. They do turn the ball over 13 times, but they do force Charleston into 13 turnovers. They win the rebound battle 36-31, and for Charleston, just 6 of 24 from 3-point range, so they remain undefeated against the spread, and they get the job done once again. Houston Christian, by the way, all of a sudden, they are now 9-2 against the spread as well. They do lose to North Texas by a count of 62-46, but the spread was well north of 20 points. A lot of places right around about a 23, so another nice defensive performance from North Texas. They allow Houston Christian to go 4 of 22 from 3, but Houston Christian is playing so slowly that even if they play badly, they have a chance to be able to cover these numbers because they're catching 20 plus on the regular. They've been outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. Like for Houston Christian, they got bludgeoned on glass 37-24, but you know what? Nice quality cover there. And for Louisiana, they've been one of your worst teams against the spread thus far this season, but they were able to get themselves a cover against McNeese because they were catching 11.5 points. McNeese, they win, but they don't cover it 64-56. Just an eyesore of a game in this one. McNeese goes 1 of 16 from 3-point range. They do win the turnover battle, though, 13-8. They win the rebound battle, 39-32, as off the bench. And Sear Parker, another nice performance for McNeese. He was able to supply the team with 22 points. they do get the job done outright, but not against the spread. Alabama against the spread, though, they do get the job done against Kent State. This by a count of 81-54. Mark Sears is able to throw in their 16 points, and Chris Youngblood, he's coming off of injury. It's been a little bit touch and go for him. He had 8 points in this one, goes just 2 of 9 from 3-point range for Alabama. They cover this game despite going 9 of 35 from 3, but for Kent State, 2 of 27 from 3-point range. They took 75 field goal attempts, and they had 54 points. Not great, to say the least, and Alabama won the rebound battle 60-40, so bricks aplenty in that one. Much better shooting in this game between Missouri and Illinois. Missouri gets the cover on the closing number of right around about 3.5 to 4, but it is Illinois who gets the job done outright. This by a count of 80-77. This was a nip and tuck game coming down the stretch. Illinois got up 9 points, and then Missouri was able to make a nice surge as Missouri goes just 3 of 13 from 3. Illinois just 8 of 26 from 3-point range. But the difference maker in this one for Illinois was the fact that they were able to win that battle on the glass, 42-30, as just Paris Jakunuskis was able to throw in their 21 points, including a shot towards the end that put the team up for good. For Missouri, you did have Mark Mitchell supply the team with 18 points, and for Missouri, they won the turnover battle 17-9, but losing that battle on the glass, that was very costly to them. You did see a few SEC teams not be able to cover on Sunday. Most of these were on bigger spreads. LSU, they get the job done, but no cover against New Orleans by a count of 86-70. They were laying well north of 25 points in this one, and for LSU, they go just 7 of 29 from 3. Did hit you the over, though. South Carolina, nice win and cover over Radford. This by a count of 74-48, as for Radford, they go just 2 of 12 from 3-point range, completely slowed down in this one. And then for Oklahoma, win but no cover against Central Arkansas, 89-66, as for Oklahoma, they were laying about 26.5 or so in this game, and for Oklahoma, they go 10 of 29 from 3-point range, and they do win the rebound battle 42-34, but not enough to be able to dominate and win that game by quite that big of a margin. Not a ton of top 25 teams in action on Sunday, but one of those teams was Michigan, and they got the job done once again. They're now about 7-5 against the spread. They've been doing a solid job there, 89-58. They take down Purdue Fort Wayne, as Fort Wayne just 8 of 38 from 3-point range, and Michigan a sizzling 10 of 21 from 3. Now, Michigan did turn over the ball 18 times in this one, but Danny Wolf, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, good versatility, and you had 16 points. Trey Donaldson in this one as well. And for Fort Wayne, they did a nice job not turning it over with just 6 turnovers, but they lost the rebound battle 48-17. As a matter of fact, Danny Wolf and Roddy Gale combined for 19 rebounds. That's more than the entire Fort Wayne team had. For Brown, what can Brown do for you? Apparently not cover, as for Kansas, they were 24.5-point favorites. They get the job done against Brown, 87-53. As for Brown, 8 of 33 from 3-point range. They took 75 field goal attempts, and they came away with 53 points. Less than savory there, but Zeke Mayo, he was savory, 25 points. You had Hunter Dickinson go off for a double-double, 15 points, 13 rebounds, so nice, easy win there. And Cincinnati, well, they were on to another cover, as Cincinnati was on to a nice quality 84-49 win over Grambling. Grambling has been a relatively solid team against the spread as well, but that said, for Grambling, just 2 of 14 from 3-point range in this one. For Cincinnati, they did a nice job being up, winning the turnover battle by kind of 16-6. You had Aziz Bendango throw in their 16 points, 6 boards, so just all around a very good effort from Cincinnati there, and all around a pretty solid effort from Morgan State to be able to cover this number against Iowa State. Iowa State has actually been one of your better teams to the over in college basketball, as their offense has really ignited. 99-72. They take down Morgan State. Morgan State was catching about 42.5 points in this game, so they cover that. Milan Mimosilovic and every other starter for Iowa State was able to reach double figures. Joshua Jefferson gave you 11 points, 12 rebounds, but for Morgan State, you did have Hobbs be able to give you 23 points, and Cameron Hobbs, and Morgan State did go 4 of 9 from 3-point range. They actually didn't turn the ball over a ton. They lost the turnover battle 13-11, so some kudos there. They were able to find a way to be able to get the job done there. I'm doing this as the Georgetown versus Seton Hall game is winding down. That looks like it's going to be a quality under, and for Georgetown, entered in the day 9-2 straight up, covering a lot of numbers, so they've been able to do a nice job there. Doing this a little bit in advance because you guys are going to be getting me on VSiN pretty much all week long. Other than Christmas Day, I'll be on from 8 p.m. Pacific to 11 o'clock p.m. Pacific for those of you guys out there on the East Coast, 11 to 2. So pre-recording this a little bit in advance, but you saw a nice quality cover out of USC. All of a sudden, it feels like the wheels are starting to turn for this team. Now, 4 straight covers for them. They've been able to get to at least 82 points each of their last 4 games. They bludgeoned Southern by a count of 82-51 as Southern goes just 2 of 19 from 3-point range. And USC did a nice job getting to the free throw line, 28 out of 35 at the charity stripe to be able to get that one done. You had Chibuzo Agbo be able to throw in their 18 points, so he was able to do a nice quality job out there. Doing a nice quality job of being able to hit unders thus far this season would be Kansas, by the way. I have to throw this in here as well. Kansas now 10 unders to just 1 over thus far this season, and Cincinnati with what they did as well. 9 unders to 2 overs. Kent State, they were in action. They have 8 unders to 2 overs, and this has been one of your better under teams in all of college basketball as well, Oakland, but they did play an over in this game, and they get the job done against Loyola Chicago, this by kind of 72-71. Oakland was up 10 points with less than 2:45 remaining. They give up an 11-0 run, and then they hit a out-of-bounds buzzer beater to be able to win against Loyola Chicago. For Loyola Chicago, entered in this game with just 1 straight-up loss, but just not a great effort out of them. You tell that they're missing Jaden Dawson, as did have Sheldon Edwards supply the team with 20 points, but just 3 points off the bench for Loyola Chicago. And the hero in this one for Oakland, how about Malcolm Christie? He was able to come in, give the team a 6 of 15 3-point shooting expose. He was able to put in their 20 points, and Oakland won the battle on the glass by a count of 36-30. The UMKC transfer and Alan McCabe was able to throw in their 20 points, 8 rebounds, so nice quality outing there. And this was a nice quality outing as well for old NC State. They take down Rider by a count of 89-63. Rider has been one of your lesser offenses in all of college basketball. And for NC State, they go 24 of 34 at the charity stripe. They were able to get there early and often to be able to get that one done. And Grand Canyon continues to be one of your lesser cover teams in all of college basketball. Quite frankly, both they and St. Louis, who did battle on Sunday, have been 2 of your worst cover teams in all of college basketball. For St. Louis, just their 2nd cover of the year. Grand Canyon and St. Louis both now 2-9 against the spread, as Grand Canyon, they get the job done, but they don't cover the 9.5. 73-72 the final. Down the stretch, Ty and Grant Foster, who came in off the bench, he was not out there on the floor. Off the bench, Grant Foster, just 3 points on 1 of 8 shooting, so that was less than tremendous. The man that was able to give you more, that would be Cullen Moore. He came in off the bench, supplied the team with 20 points, and for St. Louis, they go 12 of 32 from 3. Robbie Avila, 11 points, 6 rebounds, 3 turnovers. Again, just doesn't look the same for him this season. And Isaiah Swope, he swoped in. He was able to give the team 8 assists for them to be able to get that quality cover as well. And then you also saw Oklahoma State win, but no cover for them, 86-74. They're able to take down Oral Roberts. Been a little bit of a less than tremendous season for Oklahoma State against the spread as well, so that's been worth noting. UAB has had their issues against the spread as well. They do not cover, as they get a win but non-cover against Elkhorn State by count of 91-74. And all of a sudden, Elkhorn State has been able to cover some numbers as well. Meanwhile, you've got a UAB team that, thanks to their upchucking that we saw against Arkansas State, now just 4-8 against the spread. Virginia has been a team that's been a little bit rough as well. You don't know what to get out of them. Night out, they're 4-8 against the spread. They win but not cover against American. This by a count of 63-58. As for Virginia, they go 8 of 19 from 3-point range. Isaac McKinney, 11 points, 5 rebounds, but it was all about Elisha Saunders and his 21 points. But for American, despite the fact that they've been going through some injuries in their backcourt, they got 16 points, 5 rebounds out of Matt Mayock, so they were able to get a nice quality cover out there. And Mercyhurst, we gave them out with the video pick. They were able to get a cover by a count of 67-46 against West Virginia, and I have to throw in there, the University of Penn has been having a relatively rough season in terms of making you money as well. Now 3-9 against the spread, just completely destroyed by George Mason, 85-53. So some very interesting results in college basketball on Sunday. And if you're looking at college basketball right now, this is with a few games pending. This is with the games out there in the Diamond Head Classic still needing to be accounted for. But over the last 7 days in college basketball, things have been a little bit overwhelming. 140 overs to 136 unders, while favorites in this time span, they've been right around about 50-50. Favorites 138, 139, and 3 against the spread, with a few results still needing to be accounted for Sunday from the last 7 days. But overall for the season, it's been an underdog season. Underdogs sitting at 51%. 1,010, 970, and 29 against the spread. Meanwhile, the overs hitting at about a 50.5% clip, 999 overs to 981 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's take a look at the SEC with our good friend Blake Lovell, who does such amazing work over at Southeastern 16. Next, right here on Just Got Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beats and Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Eats Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we got Blake Lovell aboard, who does such amazing work over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love, college basketball. I know that he's very hard at work. Taking a look at everything that we're going to be getting with regards to SEC conference play. Have a few stray games that are going to be happening prior to us being able to get conference play. I know that it's been a great year for the SEC. It's been a great year for Blake, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell. And Blake, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks as always for having me, Greg.
Always great to have you aboard. And Blake, just been more and more domination by the SEC. The Big Ten finally got one with Illinois being able to take down Missouri, but let's call it what it is. That's one of the best teams in the Big Ten going up against what we perceive to be one of the lesser teams out there in the SEC. And just what have you made out of this conference? Because it's been a historic start for them, and it feels like at every turn, aside from really that Illinois game, it's been just a bunch of big wins for them, including Auburn taking Purdue to the woodshed in a game that was about a 20-point game that it wasn't even that close if you watch that game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like some of these games, you watch them, and the final score doesn't exactly indicate just how dominant some of these SEC teams have been, as you said, Greg. And I mean, yeah, the Illinois win, the Ohio State win against Kentucky. I mean, I think, you're going to have games like that throughout the course of a season. Unfortunately for Kentucky, you're in a league that is, like you mentioned, just off to a historic start. So you're going to maybe fall down the pecking order a little bit for some people after you lose a game, that way. But overall, the thing is, Kentucky can afford a loss like that. I think even in Missouri, by getting the win they got against Kansas, can afford a close loss to an Illinois. And it's not really going to hurt you. And I think that's going to be the story of the SEC this season, is as long as the teams beat the teams they should, the rest of the way in non-conference play, which, some teams have one more game, some teams may have two, I think. But, it's going to be against competition you should beat. I think Ole Miss plays Memphis. Other than that, though, you're looking at games where teams should just add another win. You're going to go into SEC play. I mentioned the stat earlier. If South Carolina beats Presbyterian on December the 30th, every single SEC team is going to have 10 or more wins entering conference play. Like, that is just an unprecedented thing. All 16 teams are going to have 10 or more wins entering conference play. We've just never seen something like that before. From that standpoint, yes, it is, again, historic what the SEC is doing. It's historic what Auburn is doing. One of the most dominant teams we've seen in probably the last several decades, just up to this point, when you look at all the metrics and all the numbers and you add it all together. And yeah, it's been quite a start for the SEC.
Oh, it certainly has been. And this team entered into the week number one in the country. Personally, I would go with Auburn, but Tennessee is currently that number one team, and we are actually going to be seeing them in action on Monday. They're going to be taking on Middle Tennessee, and it's a Middle Tennessee team that has a pretty rock-solid major that is currently a 25-point underdog. But just what do we make out of Tennessee right now? Because a lot of people are raving about the offense, but little do they know is that the defense of the Tennessee Volunteers, not only has it not taken a fall off, it's right now number one if you look at just raw points allowed on a per-possession basis.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing you can guarantee is that Tennessee is going to be one of the best defensive teams in the country. I think we brought up the stat, going into the season. I mean, the last 5 seasons, they finished in the top 5 in defensive efficiency every single year, and it just keeps on rolling. And you just sort of expected that. You were like, all right, they've got new pieces, but it's a Rick Barnes coach team at Tennessee. They're going to find a way to be one of the best defensive teams in the country, and so far they have. And I know that people, will point out the fact that, hey, they're not playing the schedule that we've seen an Auburn play or an Alabama play or something like that. But, you can't necessarily knock them for that. They've beaten everybody in front of them, and we'll see if they can keep that going against Middle Tennessee. They've got good wins over in Illinois. I think earlier in the season, just getting wins the way they got them, right, to blow out Louisville, to blow out Baylor. Again, there's another game that was not indicative of how one-sided that game was. They're just beating teams the way they should. And I think teams like that, Florida's another example of a team that's probably not played the toughest schedule, but they're just, shellacking everyone. And you've got to take notice of that. And for Tennessee, the defense doing its thing. Offensively, Chaz Lanier has been the substitute for Dalton Connect. We didn't know if that could happen. But so far, it is kind of a one-on-one substitution here. He's, maybe not going to score to the exact level that Dalton Connect did, but he's able to make shots and be that go-to guy, and it's all come together for the Vols so far.
Oh, it certainly has been. It's been impressive what we've been seeing out of them as Blake Lovell, who does such a tremendous job over at Southeastern 16. He's joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and then I mentioned it. I felt like this team should be ranked number one in all of college basketball as of right now. and that would be what we've been seeing out of the Auburn Tigers. And just what did you make out of their performance on Saturday against Purdue? Because we had no idea if Gianni Broome was even going to be playing in that game. Not only does he play, he completely dominates that game. He had a double-double, and that was with not playing much of the final 10, 15 minutes of the game. And I will say this, I don't think that he was as injured as maybe we were led to believe going into that game against Georgia State, what have you. But I mean, the guy looked absolutely impressive. And once again, I just look at the player of the year race, and I think that it has to start with Broome at number one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anyone else that's been as impactful or just simply is of more value to their team. And again, if you put it within the context that Auburn is one of the best teams we've ever seen to this point in the season, then I think you have to certainly look at his contributions and feel like, all right, he's the best player in the country. And, you know, I was kind of joking about it. I'm like, I'm running out of ways to be impressed by this guy. But then I'm like, okay, I went into a game against Purdue thinking he wasn't going to play. Then I went in thinking, okay, once I found out he was going to play, I'm like, all right, you know, he's not going to put up 20-something and 10 or anything like that, right? Well, he did it at 2. And so it's like, I don't know what else to do. This guy just keeps finding ways to impress. And, you know, I was kind of hoping someone would come out and just say, you know what, he was actually only at 51%, Greg. That way I can just be even more impressed by, you know, the feats that he continues to accomplish. But it is unreal kind of what this team is doing. And, you know, I was bringing up the stats and all that. You know, they're 6-1 in quad 1 games this season. But most interesting part of that is they're 6-1. I think their scoring margin's like plus 84 in those games. And so, like, we're not even talking about, sure, they had a couple of those close games, you know, against Houston, Iowa State, but they've just come out and just taken it to some of these other teams that are in that, you know, top 30-ish quad 1 type range. And that's what's been most impressive to me. Their lone loss on the season at Duke, they are just doing things to where, again, we've not seen a team do this to this point. And so it is a pretty incredible thing we're seeing from a team that we knew coming into the season, very experienced. You knew they were kind of made up to be a team that I think could make a, you know, Final Four type run, but we could not have imagined it coming out like this 12 games into the season. And again, it's just the contributions you've got from the best player in the country, plus everybody else just playing their role on this team. As you said earlier, I mean, no offense to Tennessee, but any poll out there that I have a vote in, Auburn's going to get that vote right now.
Yep, I'm right there with you. It has been so impressive what we've been seeing out of them thus far this season. It's been complete domination other than that game against Duke. And when you play against Duke in Cameron Indoor Stadium, typically you're playing 7-on-5 basketball as well. So do always have to throw that in there, as Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I mean, obviously we know about the big time teams in the SEC right now. Even though they've had a few losses, people are still buzzing about Alabama, Kentucky. We talked about Auburn, Tennessee, but who's a team in the SEC? Because we get one of these teams every year. I've asked you about this a few times, but I feel like it's a moving target. So I need to ask again, who's that team that could be a little bit under the radar right now? Because we get one of them every year that goes like 8-8, 10-10, something like that. They go right around 500 in conference that nobody is talking about right now.
Well, don't look now, Greg, but there was a team we were talking all about coming into the season, and then they got off to a slow start, and everybody's wondering, you know what? Come on. Like, we can't really buy into this, right? Look how they're playing on offense, all this other stuff. But now, and, you know, this team's always going to be talked about, so I say this somewhat kind of jokingly, but I think Arkansas is starting to figure some things out. And by figure some things out, I mean they're actually starting to get healthy. Maybe that was the most important thing that they were missing. You know, kind of, again, you can look at all the metrics out there. Arkansas has the profile of like a bottom 5 team or something like that in this current landscape in the SEC. But I think, you know, getting Jonas Adu back, I mean, he's starting to play his regular allotment of minutes now, and that has made a huge difference. We've seen what their guards can do. And I think getting John L. Davis completely healthy, that is still, you know, a priority for this team. Of course, he didn't play in that game against North Carolina A&T, but if they can get everybody back, which I mean, you could probably look, Greg, we may have talked about it already, but it's like, I don't know how many games this season they've had their full allotment of players. I know it's not many, if any, because there's just seemingly always someone missing out of the roster. But if they are able to do that, then I think we're going to keep getting back to kind of that thought on Arkansas going into the season saying, man, there are not a lot of other teams out there talented like this, like with this kind of talent across the board. It's just, can they keep everybody healthy? They're going to start SEC play at Tennessee. It's a great barometer, I think, to see how far they've come over these past several weeks. So more to do. And again, I don't think Arkansas will ever be a team that will necessarily be flying under the radar as long as Cal's the coach. But when you consider that, you know, maybe teams like Mississippi State and Oklahoma Ole Miss and those kind of teams, they're already getting that attention right now, as they should, based on what they're accomplishing. I think Arkansas has kind of slipped back a little bit for some people, but I wouldn't be writing off the Hogs just yet.
Yep, I wouldn't be either. That was a very nice win that they had against Michigan to be able to build themselves back up, and I do think that moving forward, we're going to be seeing the best out of them. And then just on the national landscape, because we've talked so much about the SEC, but is there another team or two that you look at and you've either had to change your position to the positive or the negative for them? Because obviously we've seen a lot of nice surprises. We've seen a couple that have been off-putting, really not out there in the SEC to call what it is. But that said, is there another team or two that you're looking at and you just had to change your opinion on them just a little bit?
As always, we talk about like these kind of teams and trying to figure out exactly where you slot them. And I think as I look around, I'll go back out west, Greg, because I think those are the teams that always, I feel like at some point during the season, we always talk about these teams either in the Mountain West or, I'll bring up the Big West and you start looking at, teams like UC Irvine and San Diego and what they're doing. And I think it's fun this time of year to look at those kind of teams because we know they're not getting the games. Not everybody's rushing out to want to play Russell Turner's UC Irvine team, right? I know they just come off a loss to Duquesne, but they got a great win at Belmont. So I think you're seeing teams like that. Again, San Diego is another one of those teams. They're not getting a lot of those great games, but to win at Utah State, right? And so I think it's fun to start looking at these kind of teams in these conferences, right? And I think even the Big West is a great example. We talk about like conference ratings year in and year out. Like that's a conference that you feel like is starting to take a bit of a step forward. Certainly this year, they feel like they've taken a big step so far. I like to look at those kind of conferences now as we start to get towards conference play. What were you able to accomplish, here so far in this portion of the season? Even look at some of those teams, that are able to get, like, look at a Princeton, right, who's able to get a win against Rutgers, and you start to see, all right, well, we've seen this before with Princeton. Like, we've seen a team that maybe they can put it together if they win the league, get to the tournament, win a couple games. So I think it's fun to really just kind of dive in, and I have, like, over the past couple weeks, starting to really look at those mid-major / low major type conferences to see which ones that are already kind of fitting that profile and seeing if they're going to be able to kind of run the gauntlet in their conference to potentially be those teams that we're talking about towards the end of March, having won a game or two in the NCAA tournament.
And I have to throw this in here as well. Have you been a little bit surprised by some of these traditional mid-majors like Vermont, Grand Canyon, teams like that have really struggled a little bit? Because I've been gauging that thus far this season as well. And it does feel like we've seen a lot of mid-majors just have a little bit of a, shall we say, lesser start than we were expecting.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that is like, I feel like in this era, it feels like it is always a guessing game where you're just like, okay, sometimes you feel like it's a sure thing with those teams you mentioned, like Vermont and Grand Canyon, just because of the sustained success that they've been able to have. But I mean, we just see it so many times, right? It's just sort of the changing landscape of college basketball and seeing how other teams start to take that next step. And if they can, get a little NIL here, get a little NIL there, maybe there's that one roster move that makes the big difference. Yeah. So I look at it from that standpoint, and I think that's what's going to make it fascinating in those kind of conferences this year. We're just seeing it, and we always say there's parity every year, but I think especially now, as you start to look around at some of these teams, we see what playing, the kind of schedules they play, like how is that going to make a difference now whenever they get into conference play? Like I look at someone like a Lipscomb, right? I mean, they went out, they played Arkansas, they played Kentucky, teams like that, played some pretty good mid-major teams, like a Belmont, Western Kentucky, teams like that, Middle Tennessee we talked about earlier. How is that going to pay off now? Once they get into conference play, you feel like they're probably the favorite in the A-Sun, right? So what are they going to be able to do? But just as you mentioned, there are some of these teams that maybe are not exactly meeting expectations so far. Can they turn that around in conference play? That's always one of the most exciting parts, I think, of the season.
Yep, absolutely. There are some teams that are not meeting expectations, but a man that doesn't just meet expectations always exceeds them. That'd be you, Blake. You do an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. I know that you're over there with Southeastern 16, but also do some great work with Clutch Point Sports as well. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I always appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, you can find all of our SEC basketball stuff, Southeastern 16 on YouTube, pretty much daily SEC basketball discussion there. And everything else college basketball related, you can find me on Twitter /X at the Blake Lovell.
And Blake does such an amazing job taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. So big thanks to Blake for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bait shots. back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be able to get Blake Lovell aboard. He does such great work over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. Obviously, it's been a great year for the SEC. It's been a great year to be able to get Blake aboard. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So, big thanks to Blake for joining me on Coast to Coast Heaps, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_41. Now, we've got a little bit of a tricky situation with the final four games because with the Diamond Classic games, as of the time of recording this, we just don't have any overnight numbers in terms of those four games. And as a matter of fact, those final two games, they're very TBD because the Hawaii game, that started up right around about 8:30, 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. Need to have this up by midnight, and at the time of recording, I did not know who was going to be able to win that game between Charlotte and Hawaii. So I sort of previewed both possible matchups that we could be getting down there. So I tried to do my best there. And for those that are wondering, I've got the spreadsheet link that is posted up in the description box, whether you're listening to this on Spotify, whether you're pulling this up from the old Twitter/X, what have you. We've got you guys all covered there in case of any changes. But that said, how about if we focus in on these first three games first, in which we've got some set numbers for 861, 862, Middle Tennessee on the road against Tennessee. Tennessee right now a 25-point favorite, and total on this game finding it anywhere between a 142.5 to a 143, and I said Tennessee is a 24-point favorite, so at a 25, I'm willing to take a shot on Middle Tennessee State. I'll probably end up writing up the under in this one. Now, write-ups are going to be a little bit more janky on this as well, because I don't know I'm going to be going about the Diamond Classic games if I'm going to be able to do anything with those at all, but that said, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Middle Tennessee because they have done a nice job of being able to guard the three-point line. They're actually a top 10 team nationally with regards to their opponent's three-point shooting percentage. And this Tennessee team, while they're getting a lot of love for the way that they've been able to really revamp that offense, they're still about 280th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they're number one in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Like, you look at what this team is doing in all of their games, and they are just absolutely pounding teams into oblivion. They have not allowed north of 70 points in a single game this far this season. They've allowed more than 68 points just once this far this season, so they've been rock solid with that regard. You've got Jazz Laniers give you 19 points per game, shooting 47% from three, and it's a Tennessee team that's shooting about 36% from three-point. I think that that's pretty sustainable with their offense as well. Big reason why it's been able to run the way that it has. Zakai Ziegler, 7.5 assists per contest. He's throwing in there 11.5 points per game. And they've got such good versatility with someone like an Igor Milicic, who's able to give you 11.5 points, 7.5 boards, only shooting 25% from three-point range. That should be going northward as the season goes along. But Jemai Mashak, Jordan Gainey, these guys have been really good. But that said, I do think that the number's gone a little bit too lofty. We were talking with Matt McCall a few days ago about just how hard it is for teams to be able to focus in just before the holidays. And Isam Mustafa, while I don't think that he wins battle down low, I think that he's going to do an okay job on the likes of Felix Aparo and company. He's giving you about 9 boards, 13 points per contest, and you've had in the backcourt a 38.5% three-point shooter in Justin Porter, who's been able to supply Middle Tennessee with 16 points per game. It's a Middle Tennessee team that's pretty solid at being able to generate turnovers. Again, top 15 team in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, with having guys like Kamari Lance, Jalen Counter being able to give you double figures. So I do think that Middle Tennessee does a solid job holding in there. They themselves, Middle Tennessee, have allowed 70 points or fewer for their last 5 games. So I'm in on this total under, and I'm willing to take north of 24 here with Middle Tennessee. 863, 864 on the betting board. It is Cal State Bakersfield. Meet for the Roadrunners. They hit the road. They're facing off against North Dakota State. North Dakota State, a favorite of 9 points, and your total on this game is 139 to 139.5. I'll be writing up Bakersfield. I set them as a 7.5 point underdog. This is a North Dakota State team that they very much live and die by the 3 ball. They're actually number 1 in the country in terms of percentage of their points that come from made threes. They've actually been a top 30 team in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression there. I like what I've been seeing out of this Bakersfield team. They're a top 60 team in the country with regards to rebound rate, and the one thing that North Dakota State really doesn't do a good job of is being able to generate second chances. They are 311th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. For Bakersfield, you've got a trio of guys who have been able to do a nice job headlining things for this team, as you've got Marvin McGee, Jamel Jones, both being able to combine for about 28 to 29 points per game, with Corey Stevenson throwing in there 14 points, leading the way with 6 boards and a steal per contest. So these guys have been very solid there. And for Bakersfield, they're shooting 39.5% from three-point range. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. So it's a situation of something's got to give. A good three-point shooting defense versus a team that shoots it relatively well from three-point range. But even if Bakersfield doesn't get it going from three land, you've got someone like Shakir Odowandu, who's saying 6'11". He's able to give you good size down low, a few rebounds. Fidelius Okeke has been able to give you about 6.5 boards, a block and a half per contest. So he's been relatively rock solid with that regard. Bakersfield about 175th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. And for North Dakota State, you've gotten really good versatility out of Jackson Monique. At 6'10", the guy is shooting 45% from three-point range, 15.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. I've been loving what he's been able to bring to the table. And then additionally, you've been able to get in the backcourt a few guys that have been able to do a nice job of just being able to shoot it from three, like a Jakari White, who's able to give you 17 points, shooting 44% from three. And as a matter of fact, for North Dakota State, aside from one player, Andy Stefanowicz, who averages 1.4 points per game. Sorry, Andy. Everyone else on the roster has made at least one three this year, shooting at least 37.5% from three, and all but one of those players shooting at least 40% from three-point range. I think there's going to be a little bit of regression with regards to this North Dakota State three-point shooting. It's a really good shooting team. It's a really versatile team. But I do think that in the end, you are going to see this CS Bakersfield team do a relatively solid job down low, be able to hold in this game. I do think that for North Dakota State, it's going to taper down just a little bit for them. Do like what I'm seeing on this North Dakota State defense, 70 points for fear allowed in each of their last 4 games. And for Bakersfield, they've allowed fewer than 65 points in each of their last 3 as well. So do think that you're going to see some bricks in this game, a relatively slow and controlled game. Somebody told 135.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm in on the points with Bakersfield. And then 865, 866 on the card. Washington is going to be playing host to Seattle. Seattle is an underdog of 9 points, and your totals between 143.5 to a 144. Did somebody told 143.5? Mostly seeing 144 in on the under, and I'd be willing to lay the 9 here with Washington. Not really willing to go past the 9 for my write-up. I'll probably have to go with -9 here on Washington, but I mean the biggest reason why I'm willing to lay it with Washington is that right now, Alexander Matthew Moncrief, the leader in points and rebounds for Seattle, giving you about 13 points, 10 rebounds per game. He's right now out of the lineup for the team. He's missed the last few games, been very much less than savory for him, and that means that Great Osabor should be very great in this game. I recognize that his efficiency hasn't been the world's greatest, mainly because the backcourt hasn't been the world's greatest, but 14 points, 8.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals per game out of him. It does feel like Washington is starting to find their bearings a little bit more. Their offense has been able to emerge with 85 plus points in each of the last 2 games, albeit against very up-tempo teams in Eastern Washington and Washington State. And for this Seattle team, they're just not the same team defensively that they have been in past years. If you're looking against D1 competition and D1 competition only, they've given up 80 plus points each of their last 3 games. They were doing a solid job when they were playing against Duke and Furman, but again, with Moncrief out of the lineup, this defense has just really taken a pitfall. You've got out there in the backcourt guys like Paris Dodson, Braden Maldonado, Jason Christophilius. I mean, these 3 guys combined for about 33.5 points per game, but other than Moncrief, you've got one other guy that gives you north of 3.5 rebounds per game, and Malik Goma, who's giving you about 5 boards, 4 points per contest. With the Seattle team, they're turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game as a relatively low-tempo team. And for Washington, even though the backcourt is a little bit less than savory, I do think that there's a little bit of upside with Zoom Diallo as well moving forward. You've been able to see the Portland transfer and Tyler Harris really come to the forefront, 13.5 points, 6 boards, shooting well north of 40% from three-point. So I do think that Washington finds a way to be able to get the job done at a 9. Wouldn't be willing to lay much more than that, but willing to go in on this Washington team. And with regards to the total at a 144 or higher, I'm in on the under. And now these last 4 games, very much up in the air. As 867, 868 on the betting board. It is going to be Charleston, and they're going to be going up against Loyola Chicago. As I am recording this, no numbers up on the board because most places just do not list an overnight number because these were TBD matchups going into the day. But that said, I've got my handicap. I said Loyola Chicago is 1.5 point favorite. I made my total a 145.5. So I have 145 or less in on the over, 146 or higher the under. And I'm willing to lay up to 1 with Loyola Chicago. 2 or more. We'll be looking at those points with Charleston / if Loyola Chicago as a money line underdog. I'd be looking at them on the money line. For Loyola Chicago, a less than savory performance yesterday against Oakland, to say the least. That was a game that they should not have lost, and I do think that they're going to bounce back here. And if you look at Charleston and the shot quality numbers, they have been a little bit more of, shall we say, a fortunate team thus far this season, but with the Charleston team, I do think that they're going to be able to provide quite a bit of issues with what Ante Brizovic is able to bring to the table. This guy stands right around about 6'11". He has been the top scorer for the team, being able to supply them with well north of 18 points per contest. He's able to put in their 8 boards per game, but as we know with Loyola Chicago, they've got Miles Rubin down low, who's able to give you multiple blocks per game. He's been able to do a really rock solid job in terms of his defense, and this team does a really nice job of just being able to swarm to the glass. Loyola Chicago does as well. You're not going to get a lot of second and third chances with them, but we are seeing with Loyola Chicago as well, the injury to Jaden Dawson is really taking out of this team. He went down in that game against South Florida. He was averaging about 12 points, shooting 37.5% from three-point range, and the offense has just felt a little bit more janky without him. The turnovers were an issue for them in the first half against Oakland, cleaned things up in the second half, but that's putting the onus quite a bit more on Sheldon Edwards, who's been supplying for the team about 12 points per contest overall for the season, shooting in the mid to high 30s from three-point range, but Des Watson yesterday did not necessarily give you the world's greatest outing. I like what I'm seeing out of Francis Nowhere, but I do think that guys like Lazar Djokovic and company for Charleston are going to be able to do a solid job in this game. And then additionally, with this Charleston team, you've been able to have Darion Boyd come back in the lineup after he was injured towards the beginning part of the season. He's been able to give this team a nice boost. He's been able to provide 9+ points in now 5 out of the last 6 games, so he's starting to rise up a little bit. You've got the Delaware State transfer into Willick Tavares, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points, shoots in the high 30s from three-point range. It has been a Loyola Chicago team that has been fouling quite a bit, but they do a nice job of being able to guard the three-point line, and that's one thing that with the Charleston team, it's been a little bit more lackadaisical with them with regards to their three-point shooting defense. They've been able to do an okay job down low. I'm not going to call it an amazing job down low, but for this Charleston team going into yesterday, about 130th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, with Loyola Chicago being a team that overall going into yesterday allowing opponents to shoot about 33 to 33.5% from three. I think that they do just enough with what they provide down low to be able to hold up in this game, and I do think that with the back-to-back circumstance, it is going to cause both of these teams to be a little bit more off with their three-point shooting. So at a 145 or less and on the over, 146 or higher, the under, one to lay up to 1 with Loyola Chicago, 2 or more, taking those points with Charleston. 869, 870 on the betting board. Oregon State and Oakland are going to be doing battle. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. One to lay up to 12 with Oregon State, 13 or more taking the points with Oakland, and then 130 or less, I'm in on the over, 131 or higher, the under. It's an Oregon State team that has been a stifling defense. They held Charleston yesterday to 65 points, and that's a Charleston team that's been cooking thus far this season. For Oregon State, gotta love what you've been seeing out of DeMarco Minor thus far this season. He's only giving you about 9.5 to 10 points per game, but he throws in their 4.5 boards. He throws in their darn near 6 assists per game. And then the man of versatility, Michael Rotage, 16+ points, 9+ boards. He's right now shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range at 6'9". I just don't know how Oakland is going to be able to match up with them. Now for Oakland, they entered into this Diamond Classic outside the top 300 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Much better effort yesterday against Loyola Chicago, and you figured that there was going to be some three-point shooting positivity coming for them. You saw Malcolm Christie yesterday go 6 of 15 from three-point range. Just don't know how sustainable that's going to be moving forward. He is a guy that is able to come in. He's able to give you some three-point shooting. He's no Jack Golke or anything like that. And then down low, you've got Alan Mbekpa, who's able to give you quite a bit down low. He was over at UMKC last season, where he was able to supply the team with about 7.5 rebounds per game 2 seasons ago. Last year, saw a little bit of an ancillary role. He's able to give you a bit of something down in the post, but I do think that for Oregon State, they're going to do a good job there. Nate Kings has been able to shoot north of 50% from three-point range. This is just flat out a Oakland team that they give up the arc. They always have given up the arc. Going into the day yesterday, they were about 335th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage, getting absolutely gashed there. Now, strangely, Oakland always plays better defense when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, but Oakland has really slowed down their tempo as well. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Oregon State, a slow and controlled team as well. So at a 130 or less, I'm in on the over, 131 or higher, the under with Oregon State. I think that they should dominate. They have covered every single spread thus far this season. So one to lay up to 12 with them, 13 or more, taking those points with Oakland. 871, 872, and 873, 874 at the time of recording. No idea what we're going to be getting in terms of these two matchups, so we're lumping them together. I'm figuring we get Murray State versus Charlotte. I think that Nebraska Nebraska and Hawaii are going to be the winners late on Sunday. So I will do that one first. If you do get Murray State versus Charlotte, I'd set Murray State as a 7-point favorite. I would make that total a 135. So we'll be willing to lay up to 6.5 with Murray State against Charlotte. If Charlotte does face Murray State, we'll be willing to take 7.5 or more with them. Now, if Charlotte plays against Nebraska, I'd be setting Nebraska as a double-figure favorite in that game, probably more in that neighborhood of 11, maybe even 12-ish, somewhere in that circumstance. And that'd be a total that I'd be setting a little bit closer to about a 139, 140-ish. Keep in mind that Charlotte is outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game. They're going up against a Murray State team that has been pretty efficient with their offense. They're turning the ball over 11 times per game. I fully recognize that you could use Jacoby Wood to turn the ball over a little bit less than 3.5 to 4 times per contest, but for Murray State, they've been able to pop it relatively well from 3-point range. Terrence Harcum has been able to give you 12-plus points per contest. It's a Murray State team that is not really going to be getting out of sorts with regards to their tempo as well. You do have Kyron Lindsey, who's been able to do a nice job giving you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. This is for a Murray State team that, with regards to being able to hit the boards, it's been a little bit hit or miss for them, about 140th in all of college basketball. But for Charlotte, even though they play slowly, they're not really executing the little things well. They're 282nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Part of it is because they've been without Giancarlo Rosado for much of the season. Comes in from Florida Atlantic, and he's given the team like 4 assists, 6 boards, double-figure amount of points. I was really liking what I was seeing out of him, but I mean, that's been a little bit of a rough situation for him. Nick Graves has come in. He's given the team 16.5 points, a little bit over 3 assists per game, and Charlotte is running clean with regards to their offense. Like, they entered into yesterday, only turned the ball over about 8.5 times per game, but not a lot of depth with this team as well. Was expecting a bit more out of Kylan Blackman. He comes on over from Coastal Carolina. He's only given the team about 5 points per contest after last year. He was shooting 36% from 3. He was supplying the Coastal team with about 11 points per contest, shooting just 25% from 3-point range. So has been less than savory for Charlotte on that front. So if you do get like Murray State versus Charlotte, I would be setting it to where 6.5 or less would be willing to lay with Murray State, 7.5 or more taking it with Charlotte, and then 134.5 or less, and on the over 135.5 or higher the under. And if it is Nebraska's going to be a double-figure favorite. I'm thinking like 11.5. That's a little bit more dependent upon what we see overnight, though. And then I would be setting that total closer to about a 138, 139. And then if we do get Nebraska versus Hawaii, I set Nebraska as a 3.5-point favorite. If strangely you get Murray State would be the underdog in that circumstance of probably about 3.5 points, somewhere in that neighborhood. And with Hawaii versus Nebraska, 137 or less, and on the over 138 or higher the under. If they face off against Murray State, probably more in the mid-130s, 134, 135 or so. But with this Nebraska unit, I do think that if they face off against Hawaii, they do get the job done on the road. But it's been a little bit of a strange Nebraska team. They're playing up-tempo. They're in the top 70 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But for some reason, it's been a little bit off-putting to me what we've been seeing out of them. You do have Bryce Williams, who's able to give you 18-plus points per contest. He's been able to shoot it relatively well from 3-point range. But Connor Esiason has been very hit or miss for the team. He's had a couple 20-plus point performances. It does feel like he's been finding his bearings a little bit more with the team, as overall for the season, he's averaging 13 points per game, but over his last 3 games, he has scored 22, 1, and 13 points. So he's been a little bit all over the map. With that regard, I know that he was dealing with some back issues last season as well. You've been able to get some relatively good rebounding out of Andrew Morgan. He's able to give you a little bit over 5 rebounds per game, but if they do indeed go up against Hawaii, this Rainbow Warriors team is one of the best teams on the glass in all of college basketball. This Hawaii team, 19th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got a Nebraska unit that they're checking in more around about 148th, and with Murray State, they're right in that neighborhood as well. So regardless of who Hawaii plays, they're going to have the advantage on the glass. Tanner Christensen has been able to supply this team with 7-plus rebounds per game. Loving what I'm seeing there, and as we know with Hawaii, they just always play better on the island rather than on the mainland. And for Hawaii right now, the biggest issue that you've got for this team, there's just not a great 3-point shooting team, and I've been talking about this as well. The San Sheriff Center, where they're playing the Diamond Head Classic, just feels like the rims aren't too great there. They're not very friendly whatsoever. We see this year in and year up. Gatis Namasika, he's been able to give you about 14 points, 6.5 boards. He's been shooting about 40% from 3-point for a Hawaii team as a whole. They're shooting about 34.5% from the outside. The 12.5 turnovers, considering they're outside the top 250 in terms of turnover or possessions per game, they need to clean that up just a little bit. But Marcus Green, who comes in from UC Christian, he's been able to supply the team with about 11.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest. So I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. You've had in and out of the lineup Ryan Rapp. That's been hurting them a little bit, but he should be good to go. In this one, he's been able to give you 7.5 points, and he's shooting about 40% from 3-point. So thinking that we're going to be getting Nebraska versus Hawaii, that's a total. We're at a 137 or less, and on the over 138 or higher the under. And Nebraska, I make a 3.5-point favorite, so we'll be willing normally have to 3 with them 4 or more. Take the points with Hawaii. If they go up against Murray State, Hawaii does, I'd be setting Hawaii as more of a 3.5 to 4 point favorite, and then that would be more of a mid 134, 135-ish total there. And that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Big thanks to Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16 for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Otherwise, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and come at you guys every single day on this podcast, even on Christmas. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
New Balance Hoops is changing the game with a roster built for the future. Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, and Zach LaVine push the pace, while Cooper Flagg is set to be the next #1 pick. Cam Brink is raising the bar for women's basketball, proving that impact goes beyond the court. Whether it's the Hezzy Low V2s for quick cuts, the two-way V5 for all-round play, or the Kawhi 4 for those who never stop climbing, New Balance Hoops makes shoes built for every player. Visit newbalance.com/basketball to explore more.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.